Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Saturday, October 19th, 2024, and welcome to Vote 2024. So today I'm just going to give a very small session. Might last about 45 minutes, maybe less. I doubt the less part. There's a lot to go over. And in this session, the only thing I'm going to focus on is showing you how to access your ballot ahead of schedule, ahead of the elections, ahead of November 5th, election day, right? How to access the ballot, what to do with certain topics on the ballot, if you're not familiar with them, how to research those topics, and how to make a decision on how to vote correctly. I'm not here to tell you who you should vote for, who you shouldn't vote for. I'm giving you the resources that you need so you can make the right decision on who you choose to vote for. So my name is Diana, and we're going to begin now. The time now is 10:16, and let's get started. You should be able to see that I have a share screen on, and that's a good thing. Let me do one thing. So I'm not even sure if you're able to see this or not. Hold on. Well, you know what? We'll come to that later on. So right now, we're going to begin with a series of things. So I put some things in order here, and I'm just going to look at my list very quickly. So the very first thing we're going to go over is, am I registered to vote? Right now, the elections are coming up in November 5th, and some people don't even realize that they're not registered, or they're registered under an old address. And what happens is, if you go to your poll at your new address, that's going to be a problem, because they're literally going to send you back to where your address is at, right? So you're going to have to look at that. There are some minor changes in the election regulations, and we're going to focus on New York State, New York City specifically, because that's where I'm from. However, you can use these methods that I'm going to show you to access your ballot wherever it is that you're at, in whatever state you're in, okay? But the topic for today, I'm really gonna focus on what's happening in New York City and New York State and what's on the ballot. So the very first thing is, am I registered to vote? So how you know whether you're registered to vote is, you're gonna go to the website vote.newyorkcity. That's where you're gonna go, and you're gonna check to see if you're registered to vote or not. So let's just go there. I'm gonna show you very quickly and see what comes up. There we go. So New York City's election website automatically comes up, the Board of Elections of New York City. Okay, and you're gonna see these tabs here, these options. So this is the home page, vote, register to vote, registration deadlines, am I registered, affiliations, understanding the ballot, request a ballot, etc. Poll workers, this is for those that are training or are going to be working for the polls that day. This is specifically for them. And the list of candidates that are running for office. All right, so let's scroll down quickly. I just want to show you what the page looks like. Okay, all of these things, important information, notices, okay, certified election results. This is for afterward. You get to look at this, okay? And then you would go here, am I registered to vote? That is the very first thing you should do, okay? So again, if you're a New York State resident or New York City resident, you will go to vote.newyorkcity, and this page will populate. So am I registered to vote? Here is, it's telling you what you have to do, okay, once you've been registered and once you haven't been registered. Now, they've changed a particular rule when it comes to felons. Originally, when you had a felony, you could not vote, but that has been amended. But there is a specific criteria that has to be met for a felon to still be able to vote in the elections. So yes, they overturned part of that. But those felons have to meet a certain requirement. It's I don't know all of the logistics. I do know that I believe it's within the first year that they have to be on good behavior after they've been released, and then other things are added to that before they can meet the criteria to vote. You would have to look that up. I'm not very familiar with it. I haven't looked it up, but you can click on this. If you say, I'm not sure if I'm registered to vote, you would click on check online and input your information. We're going to do that right now, but first things first, if you see where my arrow is at, where it says translate, okay, you get to translate this page immediately. The whole page will change to the language of your choice. Okay, so you can see that right here. The reason why you're only seeing these 5 languages is because these are probably the most 5 common languages within the New York City area, which I'm not so sure about. I would beg to differ on 2 of the languages that I'm seeing there. But I'm sure that they will also have it in your language. If you go to the voting office near you and ask them for information in the language, they will have it. Okay, so let's just click quickly on check online. Okay, so as an example, I'm actually going to put my name, just fill it in automatically, and the borough that I live in, Brooklyn, and then my date of birth. So let's go there. Okay, and yes, I'm in there. This is my voter serial number. You'll see it right here. Okay, this is my full name, my full address, the assembly, the district, and everything else. So let's go back to the search. And if I click here, it's going to tell me where my poll site is, where I need to go. But we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, because if you're going to do early voting, it's not going to be on the same poll site. So let's go back. Go back a page. Okay, so we already know what to do with checking online whether you are registered to vote or not. Now, there's another way on how you could check that also. So let's just go here quickly. Let's just analyze. So let's see what it comes up with. State. You can also go to New York State. Okay, so we went to New York City, but if you want to check the whole entire state, New York City will probably cover the tri-state area, the 5 boroughs. I don't know if your registration information will appear in the New York City website, but if you're out of the 5 boroughs, then you would go here, voter registration process, okay? Check your registration status here, or register online if you haven't registered to use the portal, okay? But you would check your registration status here. Okay, you would put your county, your first name, date of birth, zip code, the same exact thing that I put in the other page. That's what you would put here and click on search. And this will cover the whole state, the whole entire state, okay? So let's just go back quickly. And it tells you what you need to be a registered voter. You must be a citizen. You must be 18 years or older. Be a resident of this state and county, city, or village. Not be in prison for felony conviction. This is where you're going to click on here, where you're going to see where there has been an exception added. But again, they have to meet a specific criteria to be allowed to vote. Okay, so this is another option. If you live outside of the 5 boroughs, you will go to the state's website for registration to confirm your registration. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about the next item on the list, which comes out to be mail-in ballots. Now, I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago, probably, I would dare to say, based upon the last election, right, from the last election, even before that, whenever you asked for a mail-in ballot, it was either because you weren't going to be in the state during that voting process, or because you couldn't go to the polls for whatever reason. and you would put that request in. But if suddenly you decided you didn't want to mail in your ballot and you said, you know what, I'll go and I'll vote instead, whatever, I'd rather do that. You could do it. You can't do that anymore. Here's what happens. Right now, they've set the rule and they've made it clear that once you request a mail-in ballot, you cannot go to the polls to vote on election day. If you do go to the polls on election day, you will be asked to fill out an affidavit ballot, and that will not be checked till after the election. Okay, so no longer can you order these mail-in ballots and just show up on election day. They're not going to allow you to do that. It's just not going to be allowed anymore. So let's click on this to get some more information. For an early mail ballot application, you can check your registration online and then fill that out. You can request an absentee ballot. Okay, an accessible ballot application for someone who may have a disability, a visual disability or physical disability. Okay, and then there's military and overseas. Okay, now let me go to the regulations on absentee ballots. Hold on a second. I gotta find that one. Vote. Understanding the ballot. Resrouces. Let me click on this one quickly and see what it gives me. No, this is not what I want. I want to show you the regulations with regards to the mail-in ballots. Okay, so if I click on that, it's going to give me what I really don't want. Let me try this, voters' rights, instruction and voting. No, okay. So let's do this. Okay, here we go. Okay. Any registered voter may apply for an early mail ballot. Each person must apply for themselves. It is a felony to make a false statement. Voters are no longer permitted to cast a ballot on a voting machine if they have been issued an early mail or absentee ballot for that election. Voters who have already been issued an early mail or absentee ballot can still vote in person using an affidavit ballot. And again, that affidavit ballot will not be counted until afterward. And so to avoid that, you have to decide whether you want to do the mail-in ballot, and you have to go forward with the mail-in ballot, or you have to decide whether you are willing to go in person. That is a personal choice. Right now, we have early elections coming up beginning October 26th. And it runs straight through November 3rd. Many of you would have probably received by now in New York City a notice from the Board of Elections, which you would have gotten, and it has a tag, okay, which allows you to just scan it when you get to the booth. This identifies you. Okay, you should have gotten this. All right. Let's see. And inside, when you open it up, it gives you the ballot by mail deadline. Okay, so one thing that I feel is a mistake on this specifically, because people sometimes don't time everything the right way, is that it tells you here ballot by mail deadlines. So any registered voter can apply for a ballot by mail. Request online or by mail, okay, no later than October 26, 2024. So by October 26, 2024, you have to request that mail-in ballot. But you can request it in person on November 4th. That to me doesn't make any sense, really. If you think about it, it's sort of illogical to go in person on November 4th to request a mail-in ballot when you have to have that stamped by no later than November 4th in the mail so it can arrive on time, which it won't arrive until maybe 48 to 72 hours after election on November 5th. This is why sometimes we do take long for being able to give accurate figures on the election night sometimes, right? Because we are accepting these mail-in ballots after the dates, and they have to accurately count them. They're expected to do so. So I don't recommend that at all. Again, I find it to be illogical to walk in on November 4th to request it in person when you might as well go in on November 5th to vote at the polls. It's a little bit illogical for me. But if you have to register for mail-in ballot, do so with the understanding that if you go to the polls, it's going to be done with an affidavit, and that's not going to be counted until after the election. Okay, so understand that that's very, very important. Now, you're gonna see what they call your fast pass tag. Okay, this is a fast pass tag. Now, this is what you would present. You would take this off, you get this, and then you present this. I don't know how accurate this is. I still have to look into it. And the reason why is because when I attempted to scan it on my phone, because there's a QR code here, it should have allowed me to download the information and my name could come up. I believe that's the way it's supposed to work. So you can add it to your phone wallet. That way, that day you could just present your phone and they can scan it and you can go vote. But it doesn't seem to be working for me. It's not coming up. So I wouldn't pin my hopes too much on this little thing to scan. I would just be cautious about that. Make sure you give your first, your last name. Make sure you have your state ID with you. They're not going to ask you for that unless you're flagged in the system. So they're going to ask you for your address, your telephone number, and your full name. If something comes up in the system, then they're going to ask you for your state ID. And if that doesn't cover it, then they're going to ask you to fill out an affidavit ballot. Okay. So that's why this is important that you check your registration before you go and vote, because if there's been a change in address or there's been a change in name, let's say you recently got married, you didn't change it, don't use your married name because you're not going to come up under your married name. You're going to have to use the name that you had originally. That's what's going to come up, or else you're going to end up with an affidavit ballot. Okay, so now that we have gone over this and now that you understand what the risk is, if you're going to request a mail-in ballot, you got to stick to it. You got to stay with it. You can still vote in person, but you would fill out an affidavit ballot. Okay, so now let's move it along for early voting, which I already discussed, but let me show you where the registration deadlines I do have to give you, and I want to give you that. So the last day to register to vote in person is October 26th. Okay, registrations by mail can still be received by October 26th. Okay, after that, no citizen will be able to vote by November 5th because you're passing this deadline and they're telling you this is the deadline that you have. Okay, so let's go here. Understanding customer accessibility. If anyone has a disability or if anyone has an illness, they're confined to a wheelchair, they are legally visually impaired, you can still go and vote. They have ADA compliant machines that are there for individuals that require additional assistance. If you have a hearing problem, you can go there. The machine will speak a little bit louder, your choices. That's what it's going to do for you. As well as impairment. If you need someone to go with you because you cannot write correctly on the paper ballot, you are allowed to bring someone with you. They have to have their ID, and there will be someone there that will monitor what's taking place to make sure that they're only there to help you exercise your vote. That's going to be their job. So now let's go back to here. I want to show you the, where's it at? Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so let me click on here quickly. Okay, so here we go. All right, so early voting dates in New York City, okay, and I presume in New York State as well, okay, even though it's a New York City website, it's in New York State as well. Begins Saturday, October 26th, okay? Early voting hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Understand that your poll location is not going to be the same. Don't assume that every year that you go to vote, whether it's for local elections or, every 4 years for the general elections for presidency, that it's going to be at the same poll location, because it's not. You got to look up your poll location for early voting, not for regular voting. Okay. So it starts Saturday, October 26th, and it continues through Sunday, November 3rd. Early voting is a very good choice, especially because they are expecting a massive turnout on November 5th. You could be looking at much longer lines. If you're planning to go after work, you're going to be there quite a while. If you're planning to go there before work, you're still going to be there quite a while. So it is the best option. Again, it begins October 26th all the way through November 3rd. Okay, other states are already starting with early voting. They've already gotten started. Some states, it all depends on their regulations and how they do things. Okay, I think early voting is good because once November 5th comes in, you know, you won't have that rush to try to have all these people and counting all those ballots in one night, whether it be through a machine or even by hand, because machines malfunction all the time. It can happen. It helps to ease the responsibility just a little bit. Okay, so these are poll sites, right, for early voting. So if I was to click on Kings County, which is my county, you would go according to your county on this page. It's going to give me a PDF file. And this is very small, but you can increase it, right? And this goes by assembly, goes by districts, okay? So for Kings County, these are the districts that are here. Okay, so let me bring this out just a little. All right, and then we'll scroll here. Poll sites by the district. So you're gonna know what your district is once you look up your voter registration. It's gonna give you the district. It's gonna show it on there. And if you received this orientation documentation from New York City, giving you your voter registration information, then it's going to be on there as well. It's going to tell you what your district is, okay? But this is really for people who don't have time to look at a computer. So if you know someone who is not very computer savvy, I would do the Goodwill and print this out for them. And you can share it with people that that way they can know where they have to go for early voting. Okay, so that's the right thing to do. And then for your general election, which is November 5th, coming up, again, by county, and this is the poll site where you're supposed to be according to your district. All right, so now we finished with that. Now, let me go down on my list. Who can vote? We already know that US citizens can vote. We already know that anyone outside of the scope cannot vote. Now, is New York City or New York State placing emphasis and being clear on this? Not necessarily. On the website, you're going to see it's for US citizens and everything else. And I think that they're going to make every attempt possible to make sure it stays that way. But because they're not asking you for state ID, and anything goes, anything can happen. I believe that they're going to do everything possible to make sure that it is exclusive to US citizens. I want to believe that based upon certain things I've seen. And I believe that they're gonna do the best they can to make sure it stays that way, but because they have this policy that they're not gonna ask you for that unless you've been flagged in the system, it's very possible that you're gonna have a few culprits that are gonna wanna participate in this. So all this to tell you that if you know someone who's not a US citizen, who's not a US resident, and is in discussion on interest on what they'd like to do and how they think that they can vote, I would just tell you to do the right thing, and that's to discourage them from interfering with our elections. Just like we're not allowed to interfere with theirs in whatever country they may be coming from. It's not permissible, and it should not be permissible here. Okay, so you know what you have to do, you know what the right thing is, and you do it in a nice way. But make sure that you stand firm on that. Okay, so the second portion of voting 2024 is that I am going to now give you some guides that you can go through and you can use. So these are guides for voting. You can use My Faith Votes, Think Biblically, go to FRC. Okay, so we're gonna look at all of those things very quickly because I really want to get into who's on the ballot. So we're gonna go back and we're gonna look at who's on the ballot, which is the most important thing and how you look that up. So let's go quickly to a website called My Faith Votes. So it's myfaithvotes.org. Okay, so this is not the home page that you're going to see. Let me show you what the home page looks like. Take that out and we'll just leave it as the home page. Okay, so this is the home page of myfaithvotes.org. Okay, get your Christian voter guide. Today you get to download this for your voter guide. Right leaders to swing voters. Okay, pledge to vote your biblical values. It's very, very detailed, this site, very, very detailed. Okay, you're going to have a combination of things. Politics for people who hate politics. It's an article. Okay, Agua comes for US kids. Gang members accused of trying to recruit. They're going to go through a lot of different things. Okay, gender affirmation, everything. Understanding post-Roe America with Dr. Ingrid Scope. Okay, a lot of things that you can look at. Okay, Dr. David Jeremiah, Dr. Ben Carson, Mike Huckabee. It's a very, very good page to go through. Okay, so I'm curious to see what this is. Download today. Let me see the voter guide. I think I have a copy of the one from a few years ago. So this goes according to your state. And this guide is going to show you what your state is voting for, what's up in their ballots, what's not. Okay, what you should be looking at and what you shouldn't be looking at. So we've got Delaware, we've got Maryland, New Jersey, we've got New York. Okay. Let me go back for a second. This is something. Okay. Okay. So here's where we get to this page where I was at, which is the one that I showed you. Okay. So you download the voter guide and click on that, you end up on this very same page. And if, let's say you make a mistake, you can pick a different state and go back and change the state that you're in. Okay. So presidential election candidate comparison guide, let's just click on it just to see what it's going to show you. Okay. What I like is that it's very detailed. Okay. It's going to tell you what their policies are, what they're looking to attempt to do. It's not going to enter into specifics. So in other words, if one candidate says, well, I am going to allot every family member X amount of money a month to be able to help with this or with that, why does one side agree? Why does one side disagree? They tell you there, but you still got to dig in a little bit more. They're just trying to keep it as simple as possible. But it is up to you to do that homework. Okay. So they talk about everything under the sun, transgender, support for Black American communities, Babies Born Alive Act. What is it? Government control, late-term abortion, defund the police. It gives you the percentages, who agrees, who disagrees. This is the candidate sheet, okay? So this is a really good guide. If you're really stuck in the middle and you're not sure as to what direction you're gonna go, you can use this as a partial guide. Okay, so we'll close that one out. Now you can go to vice presidential candidate comparison guide. It's the same exact thing. It's gonna give you the same details, what they're gonna be working on, what they think, and so forth. And then the last one is a Christian's Guide to Today's Issues. And this is a lot more detailed. This includes scripture for those of you who are Christian. And it touches every subject that essentially we have been crying out on for quite some time. Okay, so I would click on that and make use of that. Let's go here. Guides, articles. Okay. So if you want a little bit more information, you can go here. So we want to do that. Now, another thing you can do to use as a reference is a site called Think Biblically. Okay. This really gets down to it. So if your concern is justice in your state, right? If you're on that side of the idea of justice and you're unsure as to how you should see justice, then I would look into Dr. Vadi Bakum. You can find him on YouTube as well. He also has a book called Fault Lines. This man is unbelievable. He really is. This is Vadi Bakum. And he's huge. He's about 6'6". He's no small man. And he's clear when he talks. If you want to touch on socialism, because you're unsure of what it really is, and socialism is just really like the inner layer of the cake of communism. It's just sitting there quietly, and we can see little tidbits of it, but it hasn't turned into full-blown communism yet. It's just, the cream inside. That's all it is. But it's very dangerous and becoming very dangerous. If you want to understand gender and sexuality, this is where you're going to go. Okay. There's a lot to look into. There's a lot to do. But if I can do my homework on these things, so can you. All right. My job is just to give you the resources, and that's what I want to do, and allow you to be able to know how to look for things, where to look for things, because that's important. Guidance is important in this process. Okay. So the last site I'm going to go to is FRC, which is Tony Perkins' site. So let's go in there. Another detailed site, very detailed, okay? If you find the other sites to be confusing, then go to FRC. FRC has a lot of information, okay? Party platforms, voter registration, it'll take you to your site directly to where you need to go. Election integrity, what's at risk? Why are many people saying that there could have been voter fraud, right? Or there can be voter fraud. Voter fraud is nothing new. It's been around for decades. It really is nothing new. It just simply became more explosive in the 2020 elections, more explosive. Because it really highlighted the fact that yes, it does exist. We ignore it sometimes. We don't make a big deal out of it. But it does exist, and it can be from the most obvious thing to the most unobvious thing that can happen. It's not just subject to machinery, So those are things I would look into. Okay, endorsements. Who's endorsing these candidates? You want to know. You may not realize you may be buying from a particular company and it's your favorite company and you're buying your favorite food from there, or to know that they're endorsing a candidate who you don't agree with. So then you got to make a decision. Do you still go and buy from this company where you know their proceeds are going to go to that? Or do you not do that? Same thing for makeup, same thing for clothes, same exact thing. So you might want to look that up. Um, they have amazing videos. The most recent one, the Rubicon of Marriage. Okay, alarm grows over China's increasing aggression toward Taiwan. If you're not keeping up with that, you should. That plays a very important role out here. Christians are afraid to apply their faith to politics. Study finds, okay. Walt's using state money to fund the LGBT indoctrination field. All of these things are important. So if you don't know how to look up certain topics, go to FRC. It's huge. Okay, it is huge. Let's just click on voter resources, but voter guides. I want to see what their guides are. Yeah, this is pretty big. So the presidential voter guide, life on the ballot. And when they refer to life on the ballot, they're talking about abortion. Okay, and we're going to get to that really soon. And then the Arizona Senate guide. Why is it that they're focusing on these 5 states? Well, these 5 states are playing an important role right now for November. They really are. They can swing in a direction that can make or break this election. So that's why they're placing emphasis on this. Okay, so now you know you've got FRC, you've got My Faith Votes, okay, and then you have the other site that you can go to as well. So I've given you 3 sites: Think Biblically, My Faith Votes, FRC, and you can go there. You can also find FRC Action on YouTube. So it's not just exclusive to his website. If you like to navigate on YouTube, you go to FRC Action, Tony Perkins, and you'll find FRC's page. And when you do, you'll get to see a lot of their videos, their discussions. They had a most recent prayer hub almost 2 weeks ago in Washington with several top biblical leaders, and I'll show you one of the videos. You can go through that as well, okay? So now let's get ready for what I want to look for. So if you are in front of your computer, I want you to go to ballotpedia.org, okay? And when you get to ballotpedia.org, all right, you don't have to type main page, it'll come up automatically, but once you're in the home page, you click on Ballotpedia Sample Ballot. So I want you to do that, okay? So let's do something here. Let's click on the sample ballot, and I'm gonna view my ballot. So I'm gonna see what's coming up in November at the polls, at the elections. Now, remember, never assume that your ballot is going to be the same as your neighbor on the other side of the street. Due to redistricting, right? They made changes to the districts. I could have some contenders on my ballot, and that other person, a friend of mine, whoever it is, could be living on the opposite side of me, but their address may face the avenue section versus my address facing the street section. They may have a very different ballot than yours. So don't assume that your ballot will be the same as the other person that's just a block over, because it may not be that way, okay? So I'm just gonna pick an address randomly out of a hat. Let's do another buildings, the other side. Okay, so automatically when you put your address in, it's gonna give you a series of addresses that come up in various states, so be careful. All right, make sure you choose the one you're supposed to. Now, your email address, you can put your email address if you want the ballot physically mailed to you. I don't mean the literal voter registration ballot for November 5th, but a sample ballot of what you're gonna see on your ballot will be mailed to you, emailed to you. And that can help you get a head start on the research you have to do, okay? So automatically when I click on submit, it tells me there's 17 days left to the election on Tuesday, November 5th. So let's click on that. And this is what your sample ballot is gonna look like. So right now, based upon the address I put, it says we have data indicating your ballot will contain 7 candidate races and 6 ballot measures, okay? So the sample ballot includes Democratic and Republican nominees for president and vice president of the United States. Independent and minor party candidates for the office will appear as state filing deadlines pass. Okay. Completing a sample ballot could take us a little as 7 minutes or as long as 26 minutes, depending on how much of the provided information you decide to review and study. Okay, now when you get down here to this section, it says default level of information presented on your sample ballot is concise. We don't want concise, we want detailed. So you want to move the cursor over to detailed and click on go. Now, here's what we have. This is our sample ballot. This is what it looks like. So we've got New York Proposal 1, Equal Protection of Law Amendment 2024. New York, additional public notice before City Council, vote on public safety. New York, capital planning amendment. New York, fiscal analysis and budget deadline. New York, minority and women-owned businesses, enterprise and film permits amendment 2024. New York, street cleaning requirements of waste. These are proposals. Okay, these are what they call ballot measures, and these are changes that the city and state would like to make and would like for the people to make a decision on. They're leaving it up to the people. Okay, when you scroll down, you have federal, you have President of the United States, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. Okay, and then if you keep scrolling down, you have the US Senate in New York. This is state elections. You have Kirsten Gillibrand, she's the incumbent. Mike Sapper-Cohn, he's a conservative Republican, and you have Diane Sayre from the LaRouche Party, who's coming in as an independent. Okay, now this is then divided by districts. So this district, District 10, is my district. This is who's on the ballot for the House in Congress. You may not have the same thing. Okay, you may be District 12, District 13, District 2. So you're going to have different people running in the US House district for your district, if that's the case, if they're running for the House district. Okay, you may not have anybody there. So if you don't see this, don't be alarmed. But if you do, this is for Congress. Okay, for the state of New York, for local districts, we have New York State Senate District 26. That's where I'm from. So it will be Andrew Gennardes, he's the incumbent, and then you have Vito, who's here for the Republican Party. For the New York State Assembly District 52, Joanne Simon, who's the incumbent, and Brett Winkley. For local, now, this is very important. To me, this is more important than anything else. You know, we have people that complain all the time about our judicial system, and we've got a problem with our judicial system. It's corrupt. Between the bail reforms and everything else, this is why we have a high spike in crime. Well, you put them there. So you can't complain if you put them there, right? You're simply checking off, and that's it, call it a day. You like the person because they're from one party, and you never bother to look them up. You can't complain about it now because you did it. You put them there, okay? But if you don't want them there, if you don't think that they're qualified, well, don't put them there. So what does that mean? That means you have to do your homework on these candidates. You don't have any other choice because mainstream media is not going to give you their information, and it's not, judicial candidates are not marketed in the same way as political candidates are. It's very different, you get to see all these ads, all these commercials about your political candidates, what they agree with, what they don't agree with. And I approve this message, and it's going back and forth bashing each other. This is different for the judicial. They don't work like that. For the judicial, you literally have to do your homework on who they are. And one of the ways in how you can do that is knowing where the money's coming from. Who is endorsing them? That's the biggest thing. The second biggest thing is knowing their cases. How are they with their cases? How did they fare out with their cases? Are they motivated by bias? Is it cultural appropriation? Don't think they're not capable of that, because they are. Or are they actually following the letter of the law? You have to look at everything when it comes to judges. So you can't complain if you've got what you feel is a corrupt judicial system in your borough, and yet you don't even bother to look at who's being reelected to the bench. Don't complain. You have to do your homework, and you have to make sure you know who you're electing. And the ballots for judges are a bit confusing, because it's not like the ballots for the political candidate. I don't know if you remember 2022 when we had to elect all these judges again. There was a lot of judges that were up for election in 2022. And you don't know which way to turn, because it looks weird. So on the ballot, you'll have Democrat, Republican, working families, then Democrat, conservatives, conservative. And that one particular judge is found in all of those sections. So in your mindset, if you're a Democrat conservative, you say, okay, this judge is a Democrat conservative, I'm voting for them. And you check off. What you're not realizing is that they're not really a Democrat conservative. They are on each section of the ballot because they're supposed to represent the interest of everyone. But you got to look at where the money is coming from. And then you know whose interest they're really representing. That's what it comes down to. Okay. So if you're looking at it and you see a staunch left Democrat judge on there, where she's on there simply as Democrat, and then she's on every other section. When you look at that judge and you realize who they're affiliated with, you go, wait, but this judge is not a Republican, even though she was on the ballot under the Republican section. And she's not a conservative, even though she was listed on the ballot under a conservative section. In fact, she's being paid by such and such group to represent everything that could possibly be wrong with our society. But you checked off that you're okay with that when you want to go vote for her. Why? Because they make it confusing for you. So let's dive into that a little bit. We're going to get to that in a few minutes for how we can look up these judges. It's very important that we stabilize our judicial system, and I'll give you an example. Recently, Letitia James was attempting to sue pro-life centers. She made an attempt to sue them, to have them shut down, claiming that their ability to reverse the chemical abortions is incorrect. There's no validity to it. In fact, it's a detriment. She went on to say a bunch of other things. And she sued them that way they can be closed. Well, of course, the Supreme Court went against her. The Supreme Court of the state of New York, that highest level of the state of New York, went against her 3-2 and said, no, you can't shut them down. They're not doing anything wrong. No one's been harmed by this. And the answer is no. But why did that happen? Well, because of the 5 justices, 3 were conservative, 2 are not. So the 3 outweighs the remaining 2. That's the only reason why these pro-life centers are still open. Because if you were to leave it to her, she would shut them down. Okay, this is why you must be careful with who you elect to the bench. All right, so we're going to go over that in a few minutes. So this is New York City Civil Court, Kings County. These are special elections taking place. And then this is the Supreme Court, Second Judicial District. We have to look up all these judges and find out where they're from, who they represent, what they're doing. I have to look them up because this is what's happening in my section, in my district, in my borough, right? If you're not from Brooklyn, that's not who you're going to look up. You're going to look up who's in Queens on your ballot, who's in the Bronx, who's in Manhattan, who's in Staten Island. That's who you're going to look up. Okay. But for me, for Brooklyn, yeah, it's always a headache because we are the largest borough. And there's always a lot more work to do when it comes to these elections. So we're gonna look into them just in a few minutes, okay? And I'm gonna show you how to look up these individuals and what to look for. And we're gonna go over the proposals. This is really gonna be the crux of this class as to what's on the ballot. So I am going to do this quickly. Let me just stop sharing for 1 minute. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing for 1 minute and then I'm going to just take a 1 minute break and I'm gonna come back. Okay, and I'm gonna show you the rest of the stuff. And we're gonna look up judges. We're going to look up local congressmen. I'm gonna give you a little bit of each. That way you know what to do and you know how to look up these individuals on your end. All right. So I will be back in about 1 minute, maybe two. All right, guys, I'm back. So I hope you had a few minutes to either get your coffee, um, your water, your juice, whatever it is, because now we're gonna dive into what's on the ballot. Okay, and I'm gonna share my screen again. And so you can see. All right, there we go. You should be able to see this. I hope you can see it. All right, so we're back in Ballotpedia. We are back on the ballot measure on the sample ballot. And again, if you look at it and you go, well, that doesn't look like the ballot that we use in voting. Well, it's not supposed to, it's just what's gonna be on your ballot. Okay, so we're gonna start with the proposals, the ballot measures. I'm gonna go over briefly these ballot measures are very important, specifically three that I find to be very important. Okay, so we'll go through them one by one. And we'll try to figure out what it means. Okay, that way you're aware of what it means. So the very first one we see here is New York Proposal 1, Equal Protection of Law Amendment 2024. Let's click on it. So a yes vote supports adding language to the New York Bill of Rights to provide that people cannot be denied rights based on their ethnicity, national origin, age, and disability or sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. A no vote opposes adding language to the New York Bill of Rights to provide that people cannot be denied rights based on their ethnicity, national origin, age and disability, or sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. What is the ballot question? This proposal would protect against unequal treatment based on ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, and sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, and pregnancy. It also protects against unequal treatment based on reproductive health care and autonomy. Well, what is unequal treatment? We got to look at that. A yes vote puts these protections in New York State Constitution. A no vote leaves these protections out of the state constitution. Okay, and then if you keep scrolling down, you're going to see who is for it and who is against it. Okay, and it's going to tell you who's really spearheading all of this. Okay, so sometimes we miss these things. We don't even look at these things. We just stick to the focus here. No, this is giving you everything. So I'm not going to venture into that. We're going to stick to the ballot question. If you want to review it, you can on your own time. But the ballot question again is New York Proposal, Equal Protection of Law Amendment 2024. Okay. And this is again supposedly to make sure that no one is denied their rights based on their ethnicity, national origin, sex, disability, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. What is this really about? I think we all know what this is really about. This really has nothing to do with protecting the rights of the people as much as it is about making sure that we alter the rights of the people. And what do I mean by that? This is really about two things. The first one being the right to codify Roe versus Wade. So as you remember, Roe versus Wade was overturned more than a year ago by the Supreme Court by SCOTUS, okay, who brought it back to the states. What that means is that it was covered on a federal level financially. Financially, the federal government was sustaining the Roe versus Wade, which would allow abortions on all levels to be financially funded through federal funds. The courts overturned that, returning it back to the states, meaning the states now have to provide the funding for their abortions. Federal funds should not be used. What New York is trying to do is to codify that, to sort of make it federal. Okay, that's why they're explicitly using the word reproductive health and autonomy. There's nothing reproductive about this. Okay, and that's why they place emphasis on using the word reproductive health in the sense that you should be able to have the right to decide, what you do with your body. And that's correct. We all should have that right. But we didn't have that right during COVID, huh? Yeah, we didn't see that. No, we did see thousands of people losing their jobs because they didn't have a right to decide whether they wanted to take that injection or not. And so it's not about protecting your rights. This is about protecting the agenda. And the agenda says that in New York State, you can have an abortion up until birth. There are certain things that have been implemented where if you're going to take it to that level and have an abortion up till birth, then there have to be certain factors involved. But it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, because it does. So what this is going to do is make sure that on a New York State level, nothing can interfere, meaning doctors would not have choices but to perform these practices against their will. And they will also allow them to literally take over certain other measures. The wording on this also leads you to believe that they want to make the transsexual agenda covered all across the board. Insurances are covering these procedures now on children and adults, and yet they won't cover basic medical needs. Some private insurances aren't covering the simplest things and giving you a hard time, but they have no problem covering transsexual procedures. And I don't use the word transgender because I feel it's too soft. The word is transsexual. I'm not going to go soft here. I'm not going to tread lightly. And so they are doing this. And if they can codify this and if they can change the verbiage in the Bill of Rights to include this wording, then they will be able to codify Roe versus Wade on a state level and possibly get federal funding for what they want to do, depending on how they're going to manipulate the system, but also include transsexuals in schools and children's activities, normalize it is what they want to do, and even create some exclusions for certain other cultures, which other cultures do have concerns about with this. But here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're saying, well, Diana, I mean, everyone should be able to have rights. Maybe New York doesn't have that. Oh, New York has that. Yeah, we have something called civil liberties. We have civil rights. We have federal rights. We have all of that. All of this has been covered. We have this on our bill already. What they want to do is amplify it to include gender expression, to include pregnancy outcomes, which is abortion without using the word abortion, and reproductive health care. Well, what kind of reproductive health care are we looking at? Those are questions we have to ask. If you remember a while back, there's back and forth in Congress with the bill that they wanted to pass, where one side suddenly is saying that they're for IVF. Yes, we're for IVF. We want women to get these IVF treatments. Well, you can't have it both ways. Either you're for IVF and you're against abortion, or you're for neither, but you can't work both things. That's impossible. So it was a pull and tug, because one side was claiming that the other side didn't want IVF for families and they were using it for their agenda. And so Democrats were claiming that Republicans didn't want IVF for families, and that's why they didn't want to sign the bill. Meanwhile, it's the reverse in reality. The issue with that particular IVF bill that Democrats wanted signed was because it was experimental IVF that they were trying to sign into law. And the experimental IVF is that they would begin doing IVF treatments with 2 eggs and 1 sperm, which completely overrides nature as we know it and the way the treatment should be taking place. And so that is something that was causing a massive rift because Republicans are saying you can't do that. That's not even normal. That's not a normal IVF treatment. And so that's where the pull and tug was lying at. But I think that if we were to even say yes to this agenda right here, to Proposition 1, that could be in the works as well with that type of IVF treatment. And I'm going to tell you, any person that takes that type of IVF treatment, I'm not sure of what kind of child they will end up with, if they will end up with any kind of child at all. That's normal. So we have to look at those things. We have to look at the reality of the fact that the agenda as a whole on a global level is to annihilate the existence of humanity. And it is to annihilate the existence of the next generation. That is their ultimate goal. And so these are ways on how that can be done. So between the transsexual agenda, between this new concept of IVF that they want to sign in, and the abortion for the minority groups, which really targets minorities, I'd say they're doing a pretty good job at trying to make sure that they can kill off the next generation. Okay, so in that retrospect with that ballot, now that you know what it means, Proposal 1, now that you understand what Proposal 1 is, the recommendation is that you vote no. Understand we have civil liberties here. Understand it's not as if we don't have laws that don't protect people. We do. And unfortunately, we even have some laws that are meant to hurt people. They exist just to destroy. But in this case, when it comes to civil liberties and Bill of Rights, that was established a long time ago. A long time ago. So all they want to do is make the changes so they can codify the abortion and not be penalized once it's codified. So that's what you have to keep an eye out for, and as well as transsexuals. This would include children who are in that narrative who want to become transsexuals. They will be allowed to participate in schools with your children. And that could prove to be a problem. Okay, as well as children's sports. That's a problem. So if you really value your child, and if you really want to see your child grow up in a sane environment, an environment that's going to be productive and positive, you may want to vote no for this. Okay. So this New York proposal, known as Proposal 1, Equal Protection of Law Amendment, may be worded differently in another state because a lot of states are doing this. This is not just New York. A lot of states right now, because Roe versus Wade was overturned, and they're very angry with Trump. They're pissed off at him because he got it overturned. Well, it was about time. It was never supposed to go to the federal government to begin with. It was never supposed to be federalized. This was a state decision. It was supposed to stay with the states. So, you can't be angry at him. It's not his fault, really. But they were able to prove their cases and get Roe versus Wade overturned. But now these states are trying to codify it. Multiple states are trying to do this. So be careful with the wording in your state, what it says. It may not say the same thing as what our proposal says in New York. Just look for those little clues and do your research. Go to Google. If you're not comfortable using Google, you can actually use a blocker, DuckDuckGo. It's a private browser. You can use that. You don't pay for that. That's free. And do your research on that, and they can't track you on that. So now that we're done with Proposal 1, let's move on to the next 4 proposals. So New York, additional public notice before City Council. And then capital planning amendment, fiscal analysis and budget deadline. Okay, so these other three are important as well. One gives more power to state, one gives more power to city. And so we're gonna go over that very quickly. All right, so let's just click here. We're at, okay. Okay. Okay, so going back to proposal one, I just want to go back here, because this is actually coming from the state senate, what it actually means. So when you vote in November, remember to flip over your ballot and vote on proposal one, known as the Equal Rights Amendment. This proposal amends Article 1, Section 2 of the New York Constitution. Section 2 now protects against unequal treatment based on race, color, creed, and religion. The proposal will amend the act to also protect against unequal treatment based on ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes, as well as reproductive health care and autonomy. The amendment allows law to prevent or undo past discrimination. What they're not telling you here, okay, what they're not telling you here is treatment based on ethnicity. This is concerning for the simple reason that we have an influx of illegal immigrants coming into the country. Now, if they manage to get this into law and pass this, this could mean that illegal immigrants will have an unlimited amount of rights that they're really not entitled to have, which would include voting in our elections for the future. It would also include other things. So be careful with this idea of treatment based on ethnicity, okay, as well as national origin. So sexual orientation, that means if you want to be Winnie the Pooh one day and you want to be something else, you can be, and it shouldn't be an issue for anyone else. Gender identity, gender expression. Okay, these are just little terms that are being used. And you have to be careful because we as adults, we can navigate through that, right? But the issue here is the children and the young people, they really can't. And it's being forced on them. What this also means is that they can also give more of an introduction on an educational level in schools concerning these items, which they're already introducing, even though they flat out deny it in the public. But if you look at your children's books, you'll be able to see these things. And so we have to make sure we're very careful, very, very careful. This is a little bit more specific, which I like. But again, this is proposition one, and if you keep scrolling down, you'll see the full text of the section of the Constitution that they want to amend and change, okay? So all of these things I will give you, I will have it in a breakdown and I'll hand it over to you, all the sites I go into. All right, so let's go here. Let's now go to New York State, New York, additional public notice before city council vote. A yes vote supports amending the city charter to require additional public notice and time before the city council votes on laws regarding public safety operations of the police departments, corrections departments, or fire departments. Okay. A vote no opposes amending the city charter to require additional public notice and time before the city council votes on laws regarding public safety, operations of the police departments, correction departments, or fire departments. Here's the question. This proposal would require additional public notice and time before the city council votes on laws respecting the public safety operations of the police, correction, or fire departments. Voting yes will require additional notice and time before the council votes on laws respecting public safety operations of the police and fire departments. Now, let's look at what this really means. Let's go here. I think I got. On ballot 6. 1, 2, that's 6 ballots, okay. So I'm gonna go here to the setting again, and I will hand this to you on the guide. So we've already got Proposition 1, Equal Protection Law of Amendment, and what they're doing and what they're looking at it. And then ballot question 2, cleaning public property. Ballot question 4, more notice and time before votes on public safety. Okay, additional estimates of the cost proposed laws and budget deadlines. Okay, so this is what we want. Okay, so let me go back. New York Capital Planning Amendment, New York Capital Additional Public Notice by City Council on Safety Amendment. Okay. So, okay. So question 4, as it will appear on your ballot, it's showing it as question 4, but on my ballot, it's showing it as question 2. So don't go by that. Just pay attention to the verbiage. Okay, take notice to it, because it might appear as question 2 on my ballot, and it'll appear as question 4 in a Queen's ballot. All right, so it says this proposal would require additional public notice and time before the city council votes on laws respecting the public safety operation of police, correctional, fire departments. Okay, this one's pretty straightforward, which it is. If the city council wants to vote on a law that has to do with public safety, specifically concerning the NYPD, the City Department of Correction, or FDNY, they have to notify the public, the mayor, and all of the affected agencies at least 30 days before the vote. In those 30 days, the mayor and or the agencies could hold their own hearings to solicit public input. The Charter Review Commission argues that since public safety is of central importance to the city, it requires a different public input process than other legislation. Union and agency representatives from the police, correction, and the fire departments agree. Citizens Union, a good government group, disagrees, testifying at one of the public hearings that public safety legislation receives similar public input opportunities as other laws on the issues. City and state reported that opponents felt that the Adams administration was pushing this proposal in direct response to 2 specific laws passed by the city council earlier this year. One that requires the NYPD to report on lower level encounters with residents, and another which bans solitary confinement. Okay. Adams vetoed both those laws, and the city council then overrode him. Now, one thing I'm going to say about Adams is he is 100% pro-police. So I may not agree with him on too many things, but I probably say maybe on 40 to 50% of the things he does, I do agree with him on. Okay, so city and state, okay, and then they eroded him. Okay, so this is important. Basically, they have an obligation to let the public know of any changes they're going to make 30 days before they make any changes when it comes to public safety, no matter what. And it would include anything from the FDNY to NYPD. I don't disagree with this concept. I think it's a very good concept. This keeps people in the loop. There's a pro and a con like anything else. As you may have your nut jobs that might agree with it and your nut jobs that might disagree with it, right? But I think it's worth looking into a little bit more. There's a deeper explanation to it, but I think this is the crux of why he's doing what he's doing. And it has a lot to do with this, as it states right here. City and state reported that opponents felt that the Adams administration was pushing this proposal in direct response to 2 specific laws passed by city council this year. One that requires the NYPD to report on lower level encounters with residents, and another which bans solitary confinement. Adams vetoed both those laws, and the city council then overrode him. So look into why he banned it. I would start there if you're curious and you want to make sure you vote in the right direction. Why was it banned? Why did he veto it? And why the city council attempted to override him. You can look this up, okay? So now let's go back to the other one, New York Capital Planning Amendment. This is all financial, okay? The vote supports amending the city charter to update process in the annual assessment of city facilities, mandating that facility needs inform capital planning and updating capital planning deadlines. Let's go to the question. This proposal would amend the city charter to require more detail in the annual assessment of city facilities, mandate that facilities needs inform capital planning and update capital planning deadlines. Voting yes would require more detail when assessing maintenance needs of city facilities. I agree with that. And mandating that facility needs inform capital planning and update capital planning deadlines. Okay, so let's look at the English version of that for you people, okay? So on my ballot, again, it's question 3. On the guide that's here, it's showing us question 5. The most important thing is that you look at the question as a whole, which surrounds capital planning. So don't go by the numbers I'm showing you here, which is question 3 or question 5, or what's being said in the article. No, go by the title and just remember that. That's the most important thing. Okay. So capital planning here is question 5. Question 5, as it will appear on your ballot, this proposal would amend the city charter and require more detail in the annual assessment of city facilities, mandate that facility needs inform capital planning and update capital planning deadlines. Okay. The city releases a number of reports that take stock of its infrastructure, what needs fixing, what needs to be expanded, what's going to be built. If this proposition passes, one major annual report, the citywide statement of needs, would be expanded to include more information on maintenance needs, and another report, the 10-year capital strategy, would need to explicitly take the findings in the statement of needs into account for its plan. According to the Charter Revision Commission, these recommendations were developed after testimony from Controller Brad Lander, who wanted to take advantage of the ballot measure to implement budget reforms. However, Lander said that Proposition 5 does not actually draw on his office recommendations. The proposal's meaningless, does not advance transparency, and fails to improve the city's capital planning process in any way, Lander said. Like the commission's rushed process and other recommendations, it's simply a cynical effort to distract New Yorkers. Okay. So he's in disagreement with it. He says he doesn't represent what really should be changed and done. They're proposing it. You have to do your research on this a little bit more. You're going to have to, for the capital planning, to see why they're against it or why they're for it. Okay. I'm not going to go through that here because we'll be here all day and we still have to work on the judges. That's not what I want. Okay. So now let's go down to fiscal analysis and budget deadline. Okay. Let me scroll up right here. Okay. And yes, vote supports amending the city charter to require fiscal analysis from the city council before hearings and votes on laws, authorizing fiscal analysis from the mayor and updating budget deadlines. Okay. Here's the question. This proposal would amend the city charter to require fiscal analysis from the council before hearings and votes on laws, authorize fiscal analysis from the mayor, and update budget deadlines. Voting yes would amend the city charter to require additional fiscal analysis prior to hearings, and voting no leaves the laws unchanged. Now let's look at what it says here in the sky. Okay, so it is number 3. Okay. All right, so ballot question number 3, additional estimates of the cost of proposed laws and updates to budget deadlines. Again, here it's showing ballot question number 3. On my ballot, it's showing a different number. Just look at the title, look at the subject, okay? Question 3, as it appears on your ballot, this proposal would amend the city charter to require fiscal analysis from the city council before hearings and votes on laws. Okay. Before the city council can vote on any legislation, they must present a fiscal impact statement alongside the bill that estimates how much the proposed law could cost. As it stands now, these statements are the responsibility of the city council and are created by consulting with city agencies and good government groups. Staffers create the document when the bill is mostly finalized, but before the members vote on it. A yes vote on Proposition 3 would change parts of this process. It would mandate that the city council submit a fiscal impact statement earlier so that public hearings on legislation could take the cost of the law into account, and would necessitate that all statements have a budget estimate, not just from city council, but from the Office of Management and Budget, part of the executive branch, example, the mayor. According to the Charter Revision Commission, the group consulted many budget experts as they considered the change. Fiscal hawks argue that this proposal doesn't go far enough to curb spending and address the very real problem of the de facto budgeting through legislation. Okay. Opponents of Proposition 3 say that requiring the executive branch to submit a budget estimate before a public hearing on a bill is held will just delay lawmaking process that already takes years. Jason Otaño, General Counsel for the City Council, testified at one of the Charter Revision Commission hearings that Proposition 3 would give the mayor's office a de facto veto of proposed legislation, as the office could just indefinitely withhold the information needed to create a fiscal impact statement. According to the commission's final report, which collected the testimony, Otaño said that the proposal would have a chilling effect on the exchange of ideas. Okay. In addition to its more controversial first provision, Proposition 3 would also institute some short extensions on city budget deadlines. It would extend the preliminary budget deadline from January 16th to February 1st, and then shift the deadline from the Independence Budget Office from February 1st to February 15th. Okay. So really what this is about is transparency. That's really what it's about. Do the people have a right to know more than what they're supposed to know? And if they do know more, how does that affect the budget they want to present with a law they want to pass? So you have to look at the pros and cons of this, because there are pros and there are cons. You got to look up the information, find out why Jason Otaño disagrees and why he's saying it would have a chilling effect on exchange of ideas. What does he mean by that? You have to look that up. Why does the mayor want this to pass? What is he planning? Will that take power away from the state? I think to a certain point it will. Okay, and I think he sees the state as possibly taking over in positions that they're really not entitled to have. And I think that's what it's about. So go over that, look at that. And again, I'm going to include this. I will have this for you so you can do your research, okay? Now, let's go back. New York Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise and Film Permits Amendment 2024. Okay, just 1 minute. Bear with me 1 minute. Let me stop sharing my screen. I just want to do this quickly. Give me 1 minute. I will be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. I'm going to share my screen again quickly. I apologize. I don't do a lot of talking, so when I talk for more than an hour, I can feel it. My throat gets tired. So let's go. Now I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to go back. All right. So we're now back on this ballot measure. New York Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises and Film Permits Amendment 2024. I never thought for the life of me I would see something like this on a ballot. I'm not sure what the purpose is, but it's good. Okay. A yes vote supports amending the city charter. Again, all of this is revolving around the city charter to establish the Chief Business Diversity Officer. Y ahí está. Okay, to authorize the mayor to designate the office that issues film permits and combine archive boards. Here's the question. This proposal would amend the city charter to establish the Chief Business Diversity Officer, to authorize, okay, the mayor to designate the office that issues film permits and combine archive boards. Voting yes would establish the CBDO to support MWBEs, which is Minority Women Business Enterprises, to authorize the mayor to designate the office that issues film permits and combine two boards. I really don't see why this is on a ballot. I just don't. But you'd be surprised. Okay, so now let's look at this. Okay, ballot question 6. Again, on here it's 6. On my ballot, it's not coming up as 6. Just look at the title. Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises, Film Permits and Archive Review Boards. Question 6, as it will appear on your ballot, this proposal would amend the city charter to establish the Chief Business Diversity Officer. Authorize the mayor to designate the office that issues film permits and combines archive boards. The last question is actually 3 questions bundled into one. Sort of makes sense. The first one would establish a permanent Chief Business Diversity Officer. The Chief Business Diversity Officer is a new position added by the Adams administration, and the current Chief Business Diversity Officer is Michael Garner. As the CBDO, Garner is heavily involved in the city's minority and women-owned business enterprises program and has been part of the push to hire MWBE shortlisted security firms for the city shelters. A list that includes a security firm previously owned by former Deputy Mayor Philip Banks III. Proposition seeks to change which offices have the ability to issue film permits. Currently, if you want to make a movie, you need to get a permit from the Department of Small Business Services. This proposition would make it so that the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment would also have the power to issue those permits. I don't think that's the mayor's office job. Third, this proposition would merge 2 redundant archive boards, the Archival Review Board and the Archives Reference and Research Advisory Board. Pauline Toole, the Commissioner for the Department of Records and Information Services, known as DORIS, which manages both boards, says that the DORIS proposed the merge in order to increase efficiency. She testified that recently the boards have been meeting together because their jobs are so similar that there's no need to have separate meetings. Okay, so for me, the answer is an automatic no. I'm going to continue to do my research on it, but my answer is no 100%. And the reason why is because I am completely against anything that has to do with the worldview of diversity. I don't support it in any way on any level, okay? Because their concept of diversity is not what diversity should be or is, not even presented according to scripture, right? So I don't support that at all on any context. You're entitled to your opinion. I don't do what other people do. And that's how I do things, okay? So that for me is a major no. I'm not going to have an interest in that, and I don't have an interest in that. Okay, I also am being very cautious with the idea of having minority women-owned businesses, having a take on public shelters and providing security for public shelters and no, because we don't know the experience that they have. We don't know anything in that. I don't want to be part of that. So that's one reason why I'm against it. I'm against it also because I don't think the mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment should have the power to issue permits to people who want to do films. I don't see what they have anything to do with that. You're a filmmaker. We've never had an issue in 40, 50 years getting permits. There's no reason why they can't continue to get permits now from where they're supposed to get from. Which is the Small Business Service, if they want to do films. Hollywood is always filming here. There's always filming on the streets in New York. They don't seem to have issues getting permits. I think that's a serious overreach, and because the mayor is not going to be here for the next 30 years. Whoever comes into office, we don't know what their purpose is and what they're going to use that type of power for. And so no, I don't agree with it, and I won't agree with it. As far as the Archival Review Board and the Archives Reference and Research Advisory Board, in all honesty, as God is my witness, I know nothing about that. Not a clue as to what that is. So I have to do my research on it. To me, it seems more like an incongruous proposition. It shouldn't even be on there. In reality, it really shouldn't. But my answer is no all the way on this proposition. I don't even need to think twice about it. So that's for me. You don't do what I do. You do what works for you after you've done your research, and it's after you've done your research. That's what it's supposed to be. Okay. So now let's go back. And street cleaning requirements of waste and containers. This one should be interesting. So let me go back here, 236, cleaning public property. This is number 2. Okay, so let's go here. The New York Street Cleaning Requirements of Waste and Containers Amendment 2024. So let's just skip down straight here, and it's again all revolving the city charter. This proposal would amend the city charter to expand and clarify the Department of Sanitation's power to clean streets and other city property and require disposal of waste in containers. Voting yes will expand and clarify the Department of Sanitation's power to clean streets and other city properties. Require disposal of waste in containers. Voting no leaves the law unchanged. So now let's go here to the guide again. Okay, cleaning public property. Question 2, as it will appear on your ballot, this proposal would amend the city charter to expand and clarify the Department of Sanitation's power. Okay. Currently, the City Department of Sanitation controls cleanliness and waste management on New York streets and sidewalks. However, there are some areas that fall outside of DSNY's jurisdiction, like highway medians and parks. This proposal would enable DSNY to clean any city-owned property and enforce any regulations related to city cleanliness. A yes on Proposition 2 would also establish DSNY's ability to specify what kind of trash receptacles people can use, a crucial point in the mayor's containerization initiative. Even though it's not mentioned in the text that you'll read on your ballot, there's a third piece of Proposition 2, authority over street vendors. Voting yes on Proposition 2 would give DSNY the ability to ticket street vendors on all city-owned property, including within parks, where the Parks Department and the NYPD already have enforcement power. The NYPD and Parks would maintain authority over these areas. If passed, the ballot measure would give DSNY enforcement power there as well, which could lead to increased ticketing of vendors. As reported by the city in June, summonses issued to street vendors and city parks have been climbing since 2020. Okay, and this will only lead to more unfair targeting of a largely immigrant workforce. They're trying to sneak in a change to vending policy by adding more enforcement at a time when vendors are already being issued $1,000 tickets by armed officers for selling dollar waters, said Karina Kaufman Gutierrez, Deputy Director of Nonprofit Street Vendor Project, the city in August. Okay, when approached for comment, both Parks and DSNY referred back to City Hall. Okay, so this is a bit tricky. It all depends how you see it. By law, the vendors are not allowed to be on those city sidewalks unless they have a valid permit, which that's the law. You gotta have a valid permit to be able to be on the city sidewalks. If you don't have a valid permit, you're gonna get yourself into trouble. And what happens is there is a spike in illegal vending. There's a spike in vendors that are being located in areas where you're not supposed to be at. It's a pro and a con. What you have to look at is, does the pro outweigh the con? If we say yes to this, can it outweigh what's being done? And if we say no to this, what is the outcome of saying no? Will we have more littering in the streets? Will we have more illegal vendors coming around? So there's a lot to look at with this. So before you make any decision, just look at the pros and cons of this, dive deep into it before you make that decision. So we've already covered, right, what's on this ballot. We are almost done. Hanging there with me another 20 minutes and we'll be done. So we covered everything on the ballot measures, the ballot proposals. You are expected to do your homework. Okay, I'm giving you the tools that you need to do your research, but you're expected to do your homework before you make decisions on these things, okay? So let's go down now. We know who's up for election for President of the United States. I am not going to get into that with how you could do research. No need. We've got so much social media. It's not even funny. Doing research on these two is not difficult at all. But if you do have questions and you say, I do have questions on something these candidates may have said, and I'm not sure, and I can't seem to find any information on it other than what so-and-so section has said, then let me know and I will give you the resource you're looking for, okay? Now, for US Senate in New York, this is very important. These Senate seats, I'm gonna go through it quickly. I didn't do extensive research yet because I still have to do a lot more research on these three, but I can tell you what I know for right now on these individuals. And what I'm going to tell you is when it comes to this US Senate New York seat, this is going to be on everyone's ballot. Okay, this is not going to be exclusive to just your locale. They're going to be on everyone's ballot there. I'm going to tell you, and I gotta tell you that Kirsten Gillibrand is the incumbent. She's the one that's going for re-election. Mike Sepre-Khan is part of the Republican Conservative Party, and Diane Sayre is part of the LaRouche Party. I've never heard of Diane Sayre. Mike Sepre-Khan, I've never heard of as well. Kirsten Gillibrand is a known name because I've seen her on TV. And I said, you know, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. Doesn't matter which side, you know, they thrive on, although I am careful. I don't hide it, I don't deny it. I am a Republican. I can lean independent on certain sides, but for the most part, that's who I am. But I said, let me look up Kirsten Gillibrand because she's the face you see all the time. but I want to see what she's really done and what she's doing. And I want to see if there's any commonality between what I believe in and what she believes in. On the little research that I did on her, she is 100% a full abortion advocate up until the latest term possible, okay? She is the one who also supported the third gender on our state IDs. She is also the one that made trans rights a priority. She believes in transgenders being allowed to serve in the military. In 2024, she proposed a full guide for LGBTQ legislation to outlaw discrimination against LGBTQ couples looking to adopt. She put this on the proposal to make it a state regulation. If it comes to pass, then this will also have an effect on Christian adoption agencies that adhere specifically to regulations that only Christian heterosexual couples can adopt. So this is a problem. I'm just giving you the facts that I've been able to research. I've also got references for that if you need them, but I'm going to encourage you to do your research on her. So Kirsten Gillibrand is running for re-election, but these are the things that she has supported. Once again, she's an abortion advocate, 100%. She supported the third gender on our state IDs, okay? She made trans rights a priority. She believes in transgenders being allowed to serve in the military. In 2024, she proposed a full legislation to outlaw discrimination against LGBTQ plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have every letter and number now. Couples looking to adopt. That sets a very dangerous precedent depending on what value system they have. Understand that not all people within the homosexual group have a diabolical agenda. Some of them are born into conservative views. They feel that their decision and their lifestyle is their decision alone, and they don't want it imposed on anyone else. And they don't want their children feeling obligated to live like that. And they are supportive of conservative values. These are the ones that you really don't even know about, that you don't even realize because they're not there to stir the pot, and they don't agree with what they're seeing taking place with these other individuals coming up with all these other new acronyms and letters being added to them. They don't agree with it. So this is affecting them as well, and their relationship with the public and everyone else. So we have to be careful. This agenda that she's trying to pass will have an effect on pro-life centers as well. This is a problem. So be very careful when you go to vote. Who is Mike Seprikan? I could not tell you yet. I have not looked him up yet. I will be looking him up. And as far as Diane Sayre from the LaRouche Party, I don't know who she is. I will be looking her up as well. But if you can beat me to it, then that's great. And you send me your information, you send me what you have found, and I will happily look through it. And then I will decide who I will vote for on that front. But without a doubt, Kirsten Gillibrand is off my list. So let's go down here now. U.S. House, New York District. I did more homework on this more than anything else because I feel on a local level it can have an effect, right? So Daniel Goleman is the incumbent. He's running for re-election. And then you have these three individuals that are wanting to get into this race for the Congress who can represent the New York district, okay, for the House. So you have the Senate and you have the House. He's for the House and he's looking to represent. These two also looking to represent. Who is Daniel Goleman? I don't have too much information on him, but I can tell you he as well is an abortion and reproductive act advocate. okay? He is also an advocate for LGBTQ rights with the LGBTQ Equality Act that was created, which really it's not an equality act. There's nothing equal about it. Okay. He also has very close ties to some pretty popular people. So you're gonna have to look that up. Okay. I still have more homework to do on him to make my decision before I make it, but more than likely my answer may be leaning toward no. Who is Alexander Dodenhoff? I cannot find anything on this man, literally on public record. I can't find much on him. So you can't find much on somebody. I don't care what party they're on. Don't vote for them. You don't know much about them unless they can come forward and give an explanation as to who they are, what they've done, what they plan to do, what their agenda is. Why would you vote blindly? Don't do that. Paul Briscoe, I know very little about him, but I was able to find him. Okay, he is your average family man based upon the information I could find. Very heavily into the neighborhood, into working with the neighborhood. So he's from a conservative party. So I want to look up his conservative views. I want to see what else he's done. He does have a website up and running. And he sounds more of a possibility. I still have to do more research on him, but he's possible. Okay. As far as these other three individuals, I still have to do research on them. Joanne Simon, I got to do research on her. Brett Weincoop, research on him. Now, we're going to get to the best part, which is the judges. So let's get to the judges. Let's see what the deal is. All right. So New York City Civil Court, Kings County, 6 seats up for re-election. We've got 6 seats up for civil court for re-election. Who any of these individuals are, I do not know. She seems to be on the more popular front. So let's do something here. I'm just going to take 2 as an example, and provide you with some information based upon what I've researched. So my understanding of Tahila Berman, okay, is that she graduated from Brown Law School, admitted to the bar at a very young age, at age 23, okay, worked as a law clerk. She argued legal points at the Fourth Circuit in court. Okay, she's done criminal appeals, post-court reviews and proceedings. And she currently is the principal law clerk to Honorable Catherine A. Levine. So she's going for the bar. She's setting herself up to be the next judge, I believe, in criminal court. So I'm just looking her up very quickly. This is usually how I be in basic, but what I do is I follow the endorsements when it comes to judges, and I look up their cases to see how they've fared out, if they're already in court. So you're gonna see a lot of information. Let's see, you're already seeing certain things. New York judicial candidate accused of taking Jewish Times of Israel, and her name is mentioned. Brooklyn Dems endorse diverse and capable women. This is what you always got to look at, because there's a running list, and what is diverse? What does it really mean? So let's just look at her quickly. Okay. Born and raised in Detmers Park. Okay. Later attended Brooklyn Law School. She graduated at age 23. Okay. Her career, Berman specialized in benefits labor, Cashman O'Neill, LLP, Craig and Ells, issues and lots of transactional deals. Parties who appear before the court also want a judge with proper judicial temperament. That means a judge that will listen carefully and clearly to the parties that appear before the court, a judge that will not prejudge the case, and a judge that will explore the competing arguments with an open mind. parties want a judge with the requisite patience and not a judge who will not clarify, who will not carefully listen to what the dispute is about. Or a judge that will not carefully read the papers that contain legal arguments and evidence, said Berman, which is right. People are looking for fairness, they're looking for a judge to be able to hear them out and to not be dismissive or to be in a foul mood or prejudge them based upon their political affiliation, which that seems to be common here in New York. Okay, so Berman's passion for justice caused her to turn her attention towards criminal appeals. As such, she worked with Alan Dershowitz, as a pro bono attorney for conducting legal research and providing an advisory memoranda for criminal appeal. Okay, so there's a lot to read here with regards to her working with Alan Dershowitz. He's no local legal. This guy's big. All right, so you're going to want to do your research on this particular woman. She's highly educated, seems to speak well, but again, look at where the money is coming from. Follow the money, follow her, and then you decide whether you want her to represent your interest in the courts. Okay, so the next person we have in line coming up here is Turquoise Haskin. I don't know much about him. Principal court attorney, specific referee in matrimonial law. Okay, that means he must have worked as a magistrate. Has very little info. Okay, and then you have Mark Kagan. Okay, is not a seating judge, but he was an attorney. So I believe I have him in my list of documents. Sharon Hudson, rehabilitation, mother running. Okay. No, not that one. Okay. So Mark Kagan, you would have to look him up as well if he's on your ballot. Okay, if you're in the same district. And then we have Alexis Riley. So Alexis Riley, if you notice, almost all the judges are always going to be Democrat. It's always been that way. It's unfortunate because that means our system is not balanced. It's not fair. And that's a big problem. It really is. But again, you can't complain if you're the one that's put them there. So let's go here. So Alexis Riley worked for Obama's campaign. She's a member of numerous Democratic clubs. She was an adjunct professor at Pace and LIU, and she resides in Brooklyn. So you're going to want to look her up before you make your decision. Okay, moving on to Tawana St. Louis. Okay, she's a principal law clerk to the Honorable Cheryl J. Gonzalez, Justice of the Supreme Court of the state of New York. Okay, she's worked small claims arbitration. Okay, she is credited and she's assisted students with essay writing preferences. I don't know much there. You got to do your homework on her. You really do. So again, do your homework and figure out if you want her on as a judge. Bayomi Wind, another person you have to look up. I have very little information on her. Okay, so again, you've got 6 candidates for the local court. And you gotta look them up. You gotta do your homework before you decide to check that off, just to check it off because you don't know what else to do. Again, don't complain if you say our system is corrupt, especially in New York, our judicial system. You're at fault because you're designating people that you know nothing about. Okay, so follow the money. If you can't find their cases on how they've ruled, I've done that. I have found their cases on how they've ruled. If you cannot find it, if it's difficult, that's fine. Follow the money. Who's endorsing them? Why are they being endorsed? And it's going to lead you to like 5 or 6 different sites, you know. Look through all those sites and find out if you want someone like this. Don't go by the name. Don't go by the background. Please don't do that. Okay, so now the final leg of what's on the ballot is New York Supreme Court Second Judicial District, 7 seats up for re-election and for election. Okay, Sharon D. Hudson for the Democratic Party, Conservative Party for Democrat, is the incumbent. So she's looking for re-election. Okay. Jeffrey Sunshine is also the incumbent looking for re-election. So what do we have? I don't have much on Sharon Hudson, so I have to look her up. But as an example, we can just go here and look up. And I guarantee you what's going to come up is the information I need to look at from these news, okay, to see what's there. Now, I like to use Trellis Law. But Trellis Law, you have to pay for to get access to cases like these, to see their rulings. Let's see something here. May give me something for free. The Honorable Sharon D. Hudson is a judge at the Criminal Court of the City of New York, Kings County, originally elected to Kings County Civil Court bench, but has resided on criminal court, has presided. Prior to her judgeship, she worked in the New York City Unified Court System 25 years. During her tenure, Hudson served as a court attorney for the Kings County Civil Arbitrator and Principal Law Court. She was serving as a pro se court attorney at the Red Hook Community Justice Center at the time of her election to the bench. Judge Hudson has served as a former vice chair of Bedford Stuyvesant Legal Services and was a former member of the Metropolitan Black Bar Association. She has also served as a mentor for Youth Empower for Success and Legal Outreach Program. Other memberships have included the Tribune Society and New York State Unified Court System Volunteer Lawyer Project. Here is your key, all of this. This is where you will base your research on. All of these accolades look great. This looks great. It's impressive. But here's the underlying. Who supports her? Why is she part of these associations? What makes it important for her? What is her goal? This is who you have to look at. Each of these places you have to look at to be able to make an informed decision. This is your key, okay? Now, if I do this, I've been blocked because I'm not registered. But I am registered to my other account. I'm just not going to log in right now. But if you ever wanted to do research on her, you can. Okay. Let's take criminal justice, small verdicts. Okay, so let me just go here. This is an example. Then you go to East New York News, steadfast guardian of illegal and ethical activities, Brooklyn ignores evidence. You see, you've already got a con here. So what is this con about? I don't know. You're gonna have to look into it to find out what this con is about. Brooklyn judge Sharon Hudson ignores evidence in upholding Scarcella-led murder conviction. That plays an independent role. Okay, so this is an article you're going to have to read. You see, this is why I do Google search. It's going to come up with everything that I can think of, and it can take me a while just to research one candidate. But that's okay, because if I have to do that to prove my point, if I have to make sure that our judicial system is balanced, then I have to do the job. I have to do the research. I have to look at this candidate. I just can't put them in there because I like their name. I like their culture. I like who they rub elbows with. That's not justice. Okay. So if you want justice, you got to know who you're putting on that bench. So this is something I'm going to have to look into. All right. So this is an example. Now, another one is Jeffrey S. Sunshine from the Democratic Party. As you can see here, he's also coming back for re-election. He's a judge on the bench for marital affairs. He handles family law. So you got to look him up and find out how he's fared out in those cases. Is he more favorable to the wife? Is he more favorable to the husband? Is he fair for both sides? Does he measure the situations as a one size fits all? Things like that. You have to look at that. Okay. So the next person is Keisha Allen. And so for me, I immediately crossed her out because of the associations that she has, which I said absolutely not. I'm not going to say yes to that at all. I think I may have copied down the associations. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. So again, that for me is a no, but I can't tell you what to do, and I'm not telling you what to do. I'm saying for me, it's not my choice. Okay. She's very heavy on the social justice campaign, but is it a good social justice, as the way scripture says that social justice should be? Or is it the current social justice that we're seeing that allows for vengeance to be enacted against other cultural groups versus one dominating culture that's being given the right to enact the vengeance? Is that the social justice that she's working on? So we have to carefully review. I believe I did some review. She is successful with the idea of equity and gender inequality. So that's also a no for me on that level. I don't support equity in any way. We're not here to have equity. We were created to have equality, and that's what we should have. Okay, so that for me is a no. But you do what works for you based upon your research. Okay, so if you were to continue, you have Inga O'Neill, Lisa Lewis, and Inga O'Neill for me as well was a no because of the gender equality, and have to do a little more research for her, but she is on that ballot on there. This is something. Okay. So I think this one has to do, yeah, I think this one's this guy, which I'll look him up in a minute. Okay. Okay, so then the next one is Adam Perlmutter. Well, who's Adam Perlmutter? Could be related to the Perlmutter Foundation, right? Because Perlmutter is not a very common last name. And the Perlmutter Foundation, um, I think has ties to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. I'm not sure if it's from there or if it's Mount Sinai Hospital. There's a foundation there. Okay. But he is a career long advocate of social justice, okay, environmental justice. He defends the underrepresented. So I'm not saying no just yet to him. What I am saying is it's a possibility, but we shall see with that. I'm not sure yet. I left it up in the air. And I think, okay, yeah. I think he is the one that ruled in a marital issue, which was going back and forth. Oh no, I gotta sign in and I don't wanna do that. Okay. So there was an issue where he says, there's a couple that got married under religious credences, okay? So more than likely that's done in the Islamic religion as well as the Jewish religion, okay, where that takes precedent over civil marriage. And there was a back and forth between the couples. Is it classified as a divorce? Is it not classified as a divorce? Because he's asking for the divorce, but not through the Jewish customs. So he ruled on that. That's a good article. I'm not going to get into it. It's far too long. But he said, regardless of religious practices, it doesn't matter. You're still considered to be legally married based upon X, Y, and Z. It goes deep. So you got to look that up. But again, he seems to focus on a good form of social justice, but I still have to do my homework on him and look him up. And I will do that. Now, the last one here, which we will see. Oh, hold on a second. This is not who I want. So the last one here is Christopher Robles, okay, who's a judge. And I believe he's looking to get back in the game. Okay, so the last one is Christopher Robles. So we'll look him up quickly. There's not much on him. I was able to find one or two articles, but he seems to be known and he has several associations. Right, we'll click on him on Trellis. Okay. So he is Puerto Rican. He was appointed to the Civil Court of New York by Mayor Bill de Blasio. So that for me is like questionable. Okay. He earned a bachelor's from St. John's. He completed a JD from CUNY School of Law. Prior to his appointment to the bench, Robles worked as an attorney in private practice, where he specialized in family law, civil, and appellate matters for 18 years. He's got a history in law. And he served as the board of directors of the Puerto Rican Bar Association. Okay. I believe he's also part of a mentoring program, which is in Red Hook. And a lot of the judges I notice are part of that mentoring program. And so that is another key, something else to look into for that mentoring program. Now, he's Puerto Rican. That doesn't mean I'm going to go for him. I don't care that he's Puerto Rican. I'm happy that he can represent the culture well, by taking a step up in society and being something more. That's a good thing. But that does not mean that I'm going to appoint him as a judge to the bench. I have to see who he's tied to. I have to see who's endorsing him, where the money's coming from. And that's how I make my decisions. Okay. So we are actually done with this ballot for New York City. I've explained to you who the judges are that are taking potentially taking control in the state, okay, in the city. I've explained to you the House, which is important. You're going to see that. The Senate, okay. And I've explained to you what's on the ballot, what the proposals are, and what they mean. It is up to you. I've given you all the tools you need. I've given you everything you need to be able to look this up and to be able to do your homework. And that's what we have to do. I noticed that as Hispanics, we tend to falter because we like to go with what we like, and that's not how it works. That's just not how it works. So we have to be very careful with how we vote, especially this year. We have to be very informed. Share it, so share it with family members, share it with friends, tell them, look, it's 2 hours, but it's going to show you everything you need. And maybe help you answer those questions that you have. Again, I'm not saying who you shouldn't vote for. What I am saying is that you need the tools to make an informed decision. Okay, you really do need that. And one of the things that I'm going to leave you with is I want you to be able to look up this video by Jack Hibbs, Pray Vote Stands Summit 2024. You'll find it under the Family Research Council. Okay. Where last week, as I was saying earlier, or almost 2 weeks ago, they had a whole week of prayer concerning what's happening in November, a whole week to analyze why you should vote in the direction you need to vote in. And the speakers that were there are speakers that are known. These are great men of God. These are men that are highly intelligent. And they understand what's at stake politically and economically. And so here is the Family Research Council page, FRCDC. Okay, you would click on videos. Okay, and then go down here. And it was Pray Vote Stand. That's what it was, by Tony Perkins. And you have all of these speakers that were here. A lot of these guys, some of these guys I've heard of, some of them I've never heard of because they're in a different sector. But they discuss everything on the ballots, everything. They get into it with each other, even what's happening within the church. These two by far are my favorite men right here. This is Bobby Backham and Jack Hibbs. They are without a doubt my favorite. But all of these individuals you see here had talking time, and they all represent something that is important to us, something we have to look at. Whether it's they represent one group within the church that has questions, another group within the church that has questions, or they are in political arenas. Some of them work for the WHO and are believers. Some of them are in Congress and are believers. All of this down here. Okay, so it goes all the way back to 2 weeks. So you're gonna end up starting probably from here, the opening praise and worship at the summit, and then you make your way all the way up. Okay, all the way up. But by far, you know, these two are always my favorite. They are funny. Bobby Backham and Jack Hibbs, they are serious, but they add a little humor because, yeah, God has humor. How does he not have humor? You know, so there's a lot to learn. I would also encourage you to watch PVD podcast on occasion. For PVD, I will give you 3 links to 3 videos I think you could watch. I'll tell you where to start at, and where to end it at. I'll give you those resources. PVD is great. I like to listen to them. Sometimes the language is questionable when they speak. I think you understand what I'm trying to say, but highly intelligent people. So if you're concerned about, or if you're questioning, well, this idea on you getting, I think Harris is proposing being able to give small business owners $50,000 back. Well, that $50,000 comes with a little glitch, which she's not telling you about, that they talk about. And they explain it to you how you would actually only qualify for the 50,000 that she's proposing for small business owners, and the 25,000 she's offering to give new homeowners. They get into that, so they're very heavy into economics. But that's what you need to understand what you're doing. You need to understand the financial portion. It can't just be, well, I don't believe in this or that, or no, that there's reasons for certain things and you have to look into it. Okay, so if you have questions on that, ask me about it and I'll send you the right videos and I'll be happy to do it. If you want to know more about her, then, you know, about Harris and what's going on with her, then you may want to look at Candace Owens' recent clips. Now, I'm a fan of hers only to a certain extent. I no longer have a favor for her the way I used to, because she's ventured into certain areas that I don't agree with. But I don't knock her. She's very intelligent. And when she harps on something and she suspects something, she does what she has to do to prove her point, and she proves it with evidence. In the last week and a half, she has been doing a deep dive into Miss Harris' background. And so you want to look at that. It started early last week. Okay. So she starts automatically with this down here. And I think it starts with episode 72. I think that's where it starts with. So you look at episode 72 and then make your way up. These are out of order. And you make your way up to now where a segment on this particular topic when it comes to her is like maybe 25 minutes for each one, 25, 30 minutes. But she's discovered some things that the public is not aware of. And I find it interesting, very interesting. And she's not talking haphazardly. She is talking with evidence. And that to me always speaks volumes. I don't care what anyone says. You can do a lot of blah, blah if you want. But if you don't have the evidence to back it up, then it really doesn't mean anything. So I would get started on that. But if you want me to send it to you in order as the way she has it, then let me know and I'll send you the links in order. Okay, so I'm glad each of you could join me today. I hope this is helpful for everyone. Any questions, you can send them to me and we can do the research together. I don't mind. Keep your head up. Make sure that you do your research. Make sure you check your registration before presuming you've been registered to vote. If you recently moved, it may be too late to change your address. You may have to go back to your old address and vote at that old address. But you can look that up, just be sure. And be prayerful and do your research. That's very, very important. Listen to these talking points. These people are not talking haphazardly. The information I share with you is not haphazard. The videos I watch are not haphazard. They are foundational. They are videos that contain a lot of details, meaningful details, both from the political side and the religious side. You know, both sides are giving their opinions on what's taking place and what's important. And I think we have to look at those things. As a population, we seem to be on the lower scale when it comes to being properly informed. And in my personal opinion, Hispanic churches somehow seem to meet that criteria. And I think that's a shame where they're not properly informed and they're not educated to be able to determine how to exercise this privilege that we have, which is to vote. And they're not given the resources, and resources are important. Okay, so hang in there. We're almost there. And let's see what happens, right? But share this with your friends, your family. Be an advocate. Show them how to do this in return. Show them how to do their research. And again, this is important. Locally, it's important. This is going to make a major change for us. If Proposition 1 passes, we're going to have a big problem. This will affect many areas of people's lives. So you have to look at that as well as the other propositions. And let's continue to forge forward. On another note, to close, do not forget Fox News is now in Spanish under Fox Noticias. So they just debuted last week. They're a little rusty. They have some more work to do, I will say. A little rusty, but it's their premiere. They've only got one anchor that speaks Spanish there, and she's working on it. And so if you want to follow up with her latest interviews, her most recent interview, she interviewed the president of Panama. It was very interesting. And so she got to speak to him, and there's other interviews. And I would get into it. You know, I would look at it. You're supporting another side that needs that support for the Hispanic people. You're going to find them on YouTube, and you'll find them also on social media under Noticias Fox. And they come out every day at 4 o'clock. And you will find them on Fox Deportes. That's where they're at, Fox Deportes. And that's a cable channel, but if you don't have cable, then you go to YouTube, Fox Noticias on YouTube. And you would do that. So again, get into it, watch it. It airs Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. and it gives you the other perspective that you may not know about, okay? So be blessed, have a great day, and I'm gonna end this meeting. And feel free to share this information. Happy voting.